The chainsaw roared to life at 6 a.m., its metallic scream cutting through the pristine suburban morning like a battle cry. Karen's perfectly manicured face appeared at her kitchen window, coffee mug frozen halfway to her lips, as she watched her neighbor methodically dismantle the very thing she'd spent 3 years trying to steal. What started as petty neighborhood drama was about to become a war that would destroy everything they both held dear. Because when you push someone past their breaking, the sound of Karen Mitchell's heels clicking against the concrete driveway carried across the fence like a death march. Sarah Chen didn't need to look up from her laptop to know that her neighbor was approaching with that particular stride, the one that meant trouble was brewing in paradise. Sarah, we need to talk." Karen's voice pierced through the peaceful Saturday morning like nails on a chalkboard. Sarah closed her eyes and took a deep breath, counting to 5, before setting down her coffee and looking up from her poolside workstation. There, pressed against the chain-link fence that separated their properties, stood Karen Mitchell in all her suburban glory. Blonde hair pulled back in a tight ponytail, designer athleisure wear that probably cost more than Sarah's monthly mortgage payment. And that expression, the one that said she was about to make someone else's day significantly worse. "Good morning, Karen," Sarah said, her voice carefully neutral.
"What can I help you with?"
Karen's manicured fingers gripped the fence so tightly her knuckles were white. "It's about the party last night." Again, Sarah felt her stomach drop. She'd been dreading this conversation since she'd heard Karen's sliding door slam shut at 11:47 p.m. the night before. What about it? The noise, Sarah, the music, the laughing, the splashing. It went on until nearly midnight. Karen's voice rose with each word, her perfectly applied makeup unable to hide the frustration radiating from her features. "Some of us have responsibilities. Some of us need our sleep. Karen, it was a Friday night. The music was off by 10, and we were just talking by the pool. Just talking." Karen let out a bitter laugh. Your daughter and her friends were screaming and carrying on like wild animals. The splashing alone was enough to wake the dead. Sarah's jaw tightened. She'd worked 2 jobs to afford this house, to give her 16-year-old daughter Emma a safe place to bring her friends. A place where they could be teenagers without judgment. The pool had been a dreamer, small, above-ground model that had taken her 3 years to save for, installed in the corner of her backyard where it bothered absolutely no one. Emma had 3 friends over for her birthday, Sarah said, her voice steady despite the anger building in her chest. They were in the pool for maybe 2 hours, and everyone was home by 11. It was one night, Karen, one night. Karen's voice cracked like a whip. "Sarah, this has been going on all summer. Every weekend, it's something. Pool parties, barbecues, that ridiculous laughter echoing across the fence. I'm trying to maintain a peaceful neighborhood here." Sarah stood up slowly, her laptop sliding from her lap onto the deck chair. Peaceful for who? For people who understand property values. For one thing, Karen's eyes gleamed with something that made Sarah's skin crawl. That ... thing you call a pool is an eyesore. It's dragging down the entire block. It's not visible from the street, and it's completely within my property lines. Barely. Karen stepped closer to the fence, her voice dropping to a venomous whisper. "You know what I think? I think you're being deliberately inconsiderate. I think you enjoy disrupting the peace we've worked so hard to maintain here." Sarah felt something snap inside her chest. 3 years. 3 years of Karen's complaints. 3 years of walking on eggshells. 3 years of apologizing for the crime of existing in her own backyard. 3 years of watching Karen's eyes follow every contractor, every delivery truck, every moment of joy that dared to manifest on Sarah's property. "What exactly are you asking me to do, Karen?" Karen smiled then, and it was the most terrifying thing Sarah had ever seen. "I'm asking you to be a good neighbor. I'm asking you to consider the impact your lifestyle choices are having on the rest of us." "My lifestyle choices?" Sarah's voice was barely controlled. "You mean my choice to use my own backyard? My choice to let my daughter have friends over? My choice to exist in a space I pay a mortgage for? I'm asking you to think about getting rid of that pool." The words hung in the morning air like a death sentence. Sarah stared at Karen, certain she'd misheard. "I'm sorry, what?" "The pool, Sarah. It's the root of all these problems. No pool, no parties, no noise. It's really quite simple. Sarah's hands were shaking now. You want me to get rid of my pool? The pool that's on my property? The pool that I saved for 3 years to buy? The pool that brings my daughter joy? You want me to get rid of it because it bothers you? I want you to be reasonable. Karen's voice was saccharine sweet now, the tone she used when she thought she was being generous. I know it represents an investment, but think about the return you'd get in neighborhood harmony. Think about how much better we'd all get along. Sarah walked to the fence, her bare feet silent on the grass, until she was standing just inches from Karen's perfectly composed face. No, I'm sorry. No, I'm not getting rid of my pool. I'm not getting rid of anything. This is my house, my yard, my life. If you don't like the sound of teenagers having fun, that's your problem to solve. Karen's mask slipped for just a moment, revealing something ugly underneath. Sarah, I don't think you understand the situation here. This neighborhood has standards. We have a certain way of doing things, a certain quality of life we've worked to maintain. Your ... situation is disrupting that balance. My situation? Sarah's voice was deadly quiet. What exactly is my situation, Karen? You're a single mother with a teenage daughter who doesn't understand boundaries. You work odd hours, you have people coming and going at all times of day, and now you've installed this carnival attraction in your backyard. It's not appropriate for a neighborhood like this. The words hit Sarah like physical blows. Every insecurity she'd ever felt about not fitting in, about not having enough money, about raising Emmett alone, crystallized in Karen's perfectly cruel assessment. But underneath the hurt, something else was building. Something that felt like molten steel. I see, Sarah said softly. And what would you suggest I do about my ... inappropriate situation? Karen sensed victory. Her smile widened. For starters, the pool has to go. After that, we can discuss reasonable guidelines for gatherings, noise levels, that sort of thing. I'm sure we can work something out that benefits everyone. Everyone meaning you, everyone meaning the neighborhood. Sarah, I'm trying to help you here. I'm trying to give you a chance to fix this before it becomes a bigger problem. A bigger problem. Sarah's voice was still soft, but there was something in it now that made Karen take a small step back from the fence. What kind of bigger problem? Well, there are ... channels, official channels, the HOA, for instance, code enforcement. I'd hate to see things escalate to that level, but if they have to. Sarah nodded slowly, understanding flooding through her like ice water. You're threatening me. I'm offering you a solution. Karen's voice was bright and cheerful now, as if they were discussing weekend plans instead of Sarah's capitulation. The pool goes, the noise stops, and we all live happily ever after. What could be simpler? Sarah stared at her neighbor, this woman who had just calmly threatened to use every weapon in her considerable arsenal to destroy the small piece of happiness Sarah had managed to carve out for herself and her daughter, this woman who smiled, while she delivered ultimatums, who spoke of harmony while declaring war. You know what, Karen? Sarah said, her voice perfectly calm. You're absolutely right. Karen blinked, clearly taken aback by the sudden agreement. I am. Yes, you're right that this situation can't continue. You're right that something needs to change. Sarah's smile was small and cold. You're right that the pool is the problem. Oh, Karen's confusion was evident. Well, I'm glad. We could reach an understanding. When were you thinking of having it removed? Sarah looked at her pool, the pool Emma had begged for, the pool that had cost her 3 years of overtime shifts and ramen dinners. The pool that represented every sacrifice she'd made to give her daughter a normal teenage experience. Then, she looked back at Karen's expectant face. Soon, Sarah said quietly. Very soon. Karen's smile was triumphant. Wonderful. I knew you'd see reason eventually. This is really for the best, Sarah, you'll see. As Karen clicked her way back to her house, Sarah remained at the fence, staring at the crystal-clear water that reflected the morning sky. Emma was at her father's house for the weekend, blissfully unaware that her small slice of teenage paradise was about to become a casualty in a war she'd never signed up for. Sarah pulled out her phone and scrolled through her contacts until she found the number she was looking for. The call was answered on the second ring. Mike's Equipment Rental. This is Mike. Hi, Mike. This is Sarah Chen. I need to rent a jackhammer and a chainsaw. Today, if possible. Sure thing, Sarah. Big project. Sarah looked at her pool one more time, then at Karen's house, where the kitchen curtains were still pool. Part 2. The sound of WAR the chainsaw's engine coughed to life at exactly 6 a.m. Monday morning, its mechanical roar shattering the pristine silence of Maple Grove Lane like a grenade in a library. Sarah had been awake since 4:30, sitting on her back deck with a cup of coffee, watching the sun creep over the horizon and waiting for the perfect moment to begin. She'd chosen her timing with military precision. Karen left for her yoga class every Monday at 6:45, which meant she'd have exactly 45 minutes to witness the opening act of Sarah's carefully orchestrated performance. The other neighbors would be stirring, getting ready for work, but not yet coherent enough to process what they were seeing. Perfect, Sarah had spent Sunday afternoon researching noise ordinances, property laws, and demolition permits. She'd called the city, spoken to 3 different departments, and confirmed what she'd suspected. As long as she stayed within the legal hours for construction noise and didn't exceed the decibel limits, she was free to do whatever she wanted. To her own property, the irony was delicious. The chainsaw bit into the wooden deck surrounding her pool with savage efficiency, sending splinters flying like confetti. Sarah had started with the far corner, the section most visible from Karen's kitchen window, and worked her way methodically toward the house. Each cut was deliberate, calculated, designed for maximum psychological impact. It took exactly 4 minutes for Karen's back door to slam open. "What the hell are you doing?" Karen's voice carried across both yards, high and shrill with panic. Sarah didn't look up. She guided the chainsaw through another support beam, her movements steady and controlled. The sound was incredibly grinding, screaming symphony that seemed to shake the very foundations of the neighborhood's carefully maintained peace. Sarah, stop." Karen was at the fence now, still in her silk pajamas, her hair a mess, her perfectly composed mask completely shattered. "What are you doing to your pool?" Sarah finally looked up, pushing her safety goggles up onto her forehead. "Oh, good morning, Karen," she called over the idling chainsaw. "Sorry, did I wake you? I'm just taking care of that problem we discussed." "Problem? What problem?" Karen's voice cracked with confusion and rising hysteria. "The pool." Sarah gestured at the destruction around her with the chainsaw, its blade still spinning lazily. "You were absolutely right. It's been nothing but trouble. So, I'm getting rid of it." "Getting rid of it?" Karen stared at the demolished decking at the pool that was now partially exposed and listing at a dangerous angle. "But I didn't mean This is so much more efficient and cost-effective. I should have it completely demolished and hauled away by the end of the week." Karen's face went through a remarkable series of expressions: confusion, horror, and finally, dawning realization. "Sarah, stop. Just stop for a minute. We need to talk about this. Talk about what—" Sarah revved the chainsaw, the engine screaming in response. "I'm doing exactly what you asked me to do. I'm solving the problem. Not like this." Karen was shouting now, her voice barely audible over the mechanical thunder. "This is insane. You can't just destroy your own pool." "Why not?" "It's my pool." Sarah's voice was perfectly reasonable, as if they were discussing the weather. "On my property, you said it was an eyesore, so I'm fixing that. No more eyesore, no more noise, no more parties. Problem solved." Before Karen could respond, Sarah lowered her goggles and attacked the next section of decking. The chainsaw screamed through the treated lumber like it was butter, sending a shower of sawdust and splinters toward Karen's side of the fence. "Stop, please." Karen was practically climbing the fence now, her manicured nails digging into the chain link. "You're being unreasonable. This isn't what I meant." Sarah shut off the chainsaw and looked at her neighbor with genuine confusion. "But Karen, this is exactly what you meant. You said the pool had to go. You said it was disrupting the neighborhood. You said it was an eyesore that was dragging down property values." She gestured at the chaos around her. "I meant you should sell it, or donate it, or have it properly removed." Karen's voice was climbing toward hysteria. Not this. Not destruction. Not at 6 a.m. "Oh, but this is so much faster." Sarah's enthusiasm was infectious, in the most terrifying way possible. "And you know what the best part is? The noise will be completely gone by Friday." No more pool parties, no more splashing, no more teenage laughter echoing across the fence. Just blessed silence. She fired up the chainsaw again, the engine's roar, drowning out Karen's protests. The next section of decking came apart like a house of cards, the wooden planks tumbling into the pool with tremendous splashes that sent water cascading over the sides. Other neighbors were beginning to appear now. Mrs. Patterson from next door emerged onto her back porch in her bathrobe, coffee cup in hand, staring at the spectacle with wide eyes. The Johnsons' teenage son had his phone out, filming through their kitchen window. Mr. Rodriguez was standing in his driveway, apparently having abandoned his morning routine to witness whatever the hell was happening at the Chen house. Sarah waved cheerfully at each of them before returning to her work. The chainsaw chewed through the pool's support structure with methodical precision. Sarah had watched enough demolition videos on YouTube to understand the basic principles. Compromise the structural integrity systematically, let gravity do most of the work, and always wear proper safety equipment. The pool began to collapse in on itself with a sound like thunder. "Sarah, please." Karen was sobbing now, actual tears streaming down her face as she watched the destruction unfold. "This isn't what I wanted. This isn't what anyone wanted." Sarah paused in her work, tilting her head with genuine curiosity. "But Karen, I don't understand. You said the pool was the problem. You said it had to go. I'm making it go away. Isn't this what you asked for? I asked you to be reasonable. I asked you to consider the neighborhood. I am considering the neighborhood." Sarah's voice was bright with enthusiasm. "No more noise complaints. No more disruption. No more teenagers having fun at inappropriate volume levels. You should be thanking me." The chainsaw roared back to life, and Sarah attacked the final support beam holding up the pool's western wall. The structure shuddered, groaned, and then collapsed entirely, sending several thousand gallons of water rushing across Sarah's yard in a miniature tsunami. The silence that followed was deafening. Sarah stood in the wreckage, chainsaw still idling in her hands, surveying her work with the satisfaction of an artist contemplating a masterpiece, where her pool had stood just an hour ago. There was now a crater filled with twisted metal, shredded vinyl, and muddy water. The wooden decking lay in ruins around the edges, looking like the aftermath of a small explosion. It was, without question, the most beautiful thing she'd ever seen there, she announced, pushing her goggles up and smiling at the growing crowd of neighbors. Problem solved. Karen was staring at the destruction with the blank expression of someone whose mind had simply shut down in self-defense. You destroyed it. I removed it," Sarah corrected cheerfully. "Just like you asked. I didn't ask you to, Karen gestured helplessly at the crater. "This is insane! You're insane!" "I'm responsive to community concerns," Sarah said, wiping sweat from her forehead with the back of her hand. "You identified a problem, and I solved it. That's what good neighbors do." Karen's face was cycling through colors, now white to red to purple and back again. You can't leave it like this. This is ... This is vandalism." "Vandalism?" Sarah's eyebrows shot up. "Karen, this is my property. I can do whatever I want with it. You said so yourself. Property values, neighborhood standards, all that. Well, now my property meets your standards. No more pool, but the mess, the destruction, the..." Karen's voice trailed off as the full implications began to sink in. Oh my God, what have you done?" Sarah looked around at the devastation with genuine pride. "I've solved the problem, Karen, completely and permanently. No more pool means no more pool parties. No more pool parties means no more noise. No more noise means no more complaints. It's really quite elegant when you think about it." "Elegant?" Karen's voice cracked. "This is a disaster. This is going to destroy both our property values. This crater, this mess, this environmental catastrophe in the middle of our neighborhood." Sarah's smile didn't waver. "But Karen, I thought you said the pool was what was destroying property values. Now there's no pool. Problem solved." Karen opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. For the first time in 3 years, she was completely speechless. "Besides," Sarah continued, starting to coil up the chainsaw's power cord, "I'm not done yet. This is just day 1. By the end of the week, I'll have all the debris cleared out, the crater filled in, and the whole area reseeded with grass. It'll be like the pool never existed. The crater. Karen's voice was barely a whisper. Oh yes, the crater is just temporary. Although Sarah paused, as if struck by sudden inspiration. You know, I was thinking about what to do with this space once it's cleaned up. I was considering a fire pit. You know, for evening gatherings? Or maybe a hot tub. Though I suppose that would bring back the noise issue. Karen made a sound like a wounded Ani. Part 3, The Avalanche BGENS by Tuesday morning. Maple Grove Lane had transformed into the suburban equivalent of a battlefield command center. Cars slowed to a crawl as drivers craned their necks to glimpse the crater that had once been Sarah Chen's backyard. The local Facebook group, Maple Grove Neighbors, had exploded with 247 comments overnight, ranging from horrified condemnation to grudging admiration. For what one resident called the most spectacular act of suburban rebellion in recorded history. Sarah read through the comments while sipping her morning coffee on what remained of her back deck. The wooden platform now jutted out over the destruction like the prow of a ship surveying a conquered sea. She'd positioned her laptop and coffee cup on a small table at the very edge, where the view of the crater was unobstructed and magnificent. Her phone had been ringing since 6 a.m. Mrs. Chen, this is Janet Morrison from Channel 7 News. Delete. Sarah, it's Mom. What the hell's going on over there? Mrs. Patterson called and said, delete. This is Detective Rodriguez with the police department. We've received several calls about a possible domestic disturbance. That one, she answered. Good morning, Detective. There's no domestic disturbance. I'm doing some landscaping. Ma'am, the reports we're getting suggest there's been some kind of explosion or demolition. That's correct. I'm removing a pool from my backyard. A pause. Removing it how, exactly? With a chainsaw and some basic demolition techniques. Is there a problem with that? Another pause, longer this time. Ma'am, do you have the proper permits for this kind of work? Sarah smiled. She'd been hoping someone would ask. Detective, I researched this thoroughly. No permits are required for removing an above-ground pool from private property as long as I stay within noise ordinance hours and don't exceed municipal decibel limits. I have all the documentation if you'd like to see it. And you're doing this work yourself. Yes, sir, it's very therapeutic. The detective's sigh was audible. Mrs. Chen, I have to ask, is this some kind of dispute with your neighbors? Oh no, Detective, quite the opposite. I'm being responsive to community concerns. My neighbor expressed some very valid points about the pool's impact on neighborhood harmony, so I decided to address the issue directly. By destroying your pool with a chainsaw, by removing my pool using the most efficient method available to me, Sarah corrected. I believe in taking decisive action when problems arise. After she hung up, Sarah noticed Karen's kitchen curtains twitch. Her neighbor had been stationed at that window since dawn, watching Sarah's every move with the intensity of a prison guard, monitoring a particularly dangerous inmate. Sarah waved cheerfully and returned to her laptop. The morning's entertainment arrived at 9:47 a.m. in the form of a white SUV with Maple Grove Homeowners Association emblazoned on the side in gold lettering. Sarah watched with interest as 3 people emerged: President Margaret Whitfield, Vice President Douglas Crane, and Secretary Linda Park. They stood at the edge of Sarah's driveway for several minutes, apparently gathering courage before approaching. Her front door. Sarah let them ring the doorbell twice before answering. Mrs. Chen, Margaret Whitfield's voice, carried the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. She was a tall, angular woman in her 60s, with silver hair pulled back in a severe bun and the kind of expression that suggested she found the entire world slightly disappointing. We need to discuss the situation in your backyard. Oh, wonderful. Sarah's enthusiasm was genuine. Please, come in. Would you like some coffee? I just made a fresh pot. The 3 HOA officials exchanged glances. This was clearly not the reception they'd expected. That won't be necessary, Margaret said stiffly. This is a formal visit regarding potential violations of our neighborhood covenants. Violations. Sarah's confusion appeared authentic. I'm sorry, I don't understand. What violations? Douglas Crane, a portly man with thinning hair and the red-faced complexion of someone who spent too much time angry about things beyond his control, stepped forward. Mrs. Chen, you've created an eyesore that's visible from multiple properties. The crater in your backyard is a safety hazard, a potential liability issue, and frankly, it's bringing down property values for the entire street. Sarah nodded thoughtfully. I see your concern, Mr. Crane, but I have to ask Wizen that exactly the same complaint you all had about my pool. Linda Park, a nervous-looking woman who kept glancing toward the backyard as if expecting something to explode, cleared her throat. Mrs. Chen, we understand you had some disagreements with Mrs. Mitchell about noise levels and such, but this response is completely disproportionate. Disproportionate. Sarah's eyebrows rose. Mrs. Park, I was told that my pool was an eyesore that was dragging down property values and disrupting neighborhood harmony. I was strongly encouraged to remove it, so I did. How is that disproportionate? Margaret's jaw tightened. By remove it, any reasonable person would assume you meant having it professionally dismantled and disposed of. Not whatever this is. This is removal, Sarah said simply. The pool is gone. Mission accomplished. The pool is gone. But now you have a crater that looks like a bomb went off. Douglas's voice was rising. You've created a bigger problem than you solved. Sarah tilted her head, considering this. Mr. Crane, are you saying that my response to community concerns was inadequate? Because I have to tell you, I'm not finished yet. I'm planning to have the whole area cleaned up and restored by the end of the week, but if you think more dramatic action is needed, no. All three officials spoke at once. No more dramatic action, Margaret said quickly. Mrs. Chen, we're here to discuss reasonable solutions to this situation. I'm listening. Margaret composed herself, clearly shifting into negotiation mode. The association is prepared to offer assistance with proper cleanup and restoration of your yard. We have contacts with landscaping companies, filled dirt suppliers, that sort of thing. We could even discuss a partial reimbursement for your losses. Sarah's smile was brilliant. That's very generous. But I have to ask, what exactly are you asking me to do? Fill in the crater, reseed the area, and restore your yard to its previous condition, Linda said quickly, its previous condition being. The three officials exchanged another look. Douglas cleared his threat. Well, obviously we'd prefer that you not reinstall another pool. Ah, Sarah nodded slowly. So you want me to clean up the mess? Spend my own money to restore the yard? And then not use my property the way I want to use it? Mrs. Chen, Margaret's voice carried a note of warning. The association has the authority to enforce covenant violations. If you don't address this situation voluntarily, we can compel compliance through legal channels. Sarah's expression didn't change, but something shifted in the air around her. Mrs. Whitfield, I've read our neighborhood covenants very carefully, cover to cover actually, and I have to say, it's fascinating reading. I'm sure it is, Margaret said dismissively. For instance, did you know that Section 4.7 specifically prohibits exterior modifications visible from neighboring properties without prior Architectural Review Board approval? Margaret's confidence faltered slightly. Yes, of course, that's standard and section. 6.2 requires that all landscape changes involving more than 50 square feet receive written approval before implementation. The officials were looking less comfortable now. Mrs. Chen, Douglas said carefully, what's your point? Sarah's smile was radiant. My point, Mr. Crane, is that I've been keeping very detailed records. Security camera footage. Actually, it's amazing what you can see from the right angle. She pulled out her phone and scrolled through several video files. For instance, here's Mrs. Patterson installing that lovely garden shed last month. Beautiful work, really. And here's the Johnson family putting in their new deck. Quite impressive. For a weekend project, the color was draining from Margaret's face. She added almost 200 square feet of new concrete. The contractor did excellent work, very professional. The silence stretched like a taut wire. Now, Sarah continued, I'm sure these were all just oversights. I mean, we're all neighbors here. We all want what's best for the community. But according to the covenants, each of these modifications should have resulted in a minimum fine of $500 per violation, plus mandatory restoration to original condition. Linda Park made a small whimpering sound. Mrs. Chen. Margaret's voice was carefully controlled. What exactly are you suggesting? I'm suggesting that maybe we should all be a little more understanding of each other's property choices, Sarah said sweetly. After all, We're all just trying to enjoy our homes and make our families happy, don't you think? Douglas was sweating. Now, despite the morning chill, are you? Are you threatening to file covenant violations against your neighbors? Threatening? Sarah looked genuinely shocked. Mr. Crane, I would never threaten anyone. I'm simply pointing out that we all seem to have been very flexible with the rules in the past. I'm hoping that flexibility might continue. Margaret straightened her shoulders, clearly recognizing a negotiation when she saw one. What are your terms? Oh, I don't have terms, Sarah said cheerfully. I have a timeline. I'll have my yard completely restored by Friday AFT.